Look at that. That was fast.
What? Trump went from Fifth Avenue to taking the Fifth.
The Fifth.
Is that it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Also, by the way, I just used it's the show name from yesterday.
I could have been the very first like.
Oh, but you missed it, didn't you?
No, I think I did.
Whoops. I heard flaflum. I didn't actually hear the...
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you.
Means we're starting now.
Oh, yes.
Doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Well, it's a bad week for ironic Schadenfreude moments, I suppose. This week, I don't know if you know this, but
a bad week or a good week?
Well, I guess it's debatable. You know what?
Yeah.
You know, you dang it, you stumped me.
Gotcha.
Ultimately, I think. By the way, happy Saturday, everybody! Tonight is Sexy Liberal in San Francisco. As soon as the show is over, I am beating feet to the airport to get up there in time for sound check. Dragging my guitar along, and my head rush and my the smallest rigging I can possibly carry anywhere. Like things are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as yes, that's right. In the immortal words of Faith No More. So lots to cover today. Not the least of which, by golly, is the fact that last night. Well, let's see if I think I got the audio on it. I don't know if we'll be able to hear it.
Never reports the crowds, you know. By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley. You know, did you know they destroyed all of the information, all of the evidence, everything? Deleted and destroyed all of it, because of lots of things. Like Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people.
So, in case you're confused,
Nikki Haley, he means
Nancy Pelosi.
Right? Yes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the names rhyme.
Sure, they're both women, which is like, can we just in Trump think, can't we just put all women into one category of the problem and just leave it there? I don't know if did you by any chance, Johnny Million, see the pictures? Now, you and I both have been in long-term relationships, some that even predate our current long-term relationships.
Yeah.
And there are moments that any relationship has where, you know, maybe you're getting on each other's nerves. There's there's highs, there's lows, there's miscommunications, difficult. Yep. And then there's I guess situation where the entire relationship turns a corner. It either goes the way you want it to, and you're like, okay, we're out of the woods, or nope, this is what it is from now on. Yeah. And anybody who saw the post-funeral footage, did you see Trump and his post-funeral footage where he came out of the funeral with...
No, whose funeral? Who died?
Melania's mother died.
Oh, I saw that.
Right? Yeah, and you witnessed her death? Where were you? Where have you been? I knew it. So,
it's taken a long time for me to come clean with this.
Right. But you're the one who pushed Ivana down the stairs. Oh God. So anyways, he comes out of the funeral, like he's standing next to Barron, I guess, and they walk out in the funeral procession, yada yada. But when they left, he was gonna get into the SUV with her, and she was not having it. There was a whole moment where he was planning it in, and she was like, it was like that moment in Iron Man where he's like, sorry, this is the fun bee. The humdrum bee is back there. and there's a picture of her. And I mean, bless her heart, she's at her mother's funeral. And, stacks, that kind of stuff on top. But she just is spitting mad about something. Is it... to the normal crowd, I think it would be like, is it Elena Haba related? You know what I mean? Is it Is there something going on there? Is it or is that the relief valve that gets him off her case where she's like, just go. I don't want you here. Go hang out with your lawyer. We've made an agreement.
Right.
You have the lawyer and I have the rest of my life. But either way, really odd weekend if you're Donald Trump in general. And it, according to the chairman of the New Hampshire GOP, it is very possible that that Trump could lose the New Hampshire primary this week. For real, like lose it, not just, come in, it's close and he comes out ahead, but Nikki Haley has a good showing that drives her and like actually lose it. And regardless of the polls, because the issue with the polls is you got a lot of they're going by the very strong support idea. Not a lot of people in the Republican Party, especially in New Hampshire and other places, have total strong support for Nikki Haley or for Ron DeSantis or anybody else who's, I don't know, Shemp Lewinsky, whoever else is running the third, fifth tier people, which is bad news for Trump. And, people will, mock the idea that there's no such thing as bad news for Trump amongst his crowd. But in reality, these folks are, they're not excited about the specific candidate. They're just excited about anybody but him.
Yep.
And that's, at this point, that's about 50% of the party. And I don't know how many times I have to say this, but you've got a full quarter of the Republican electorate that is not going to vote for Donald Trump again. This is not about Democrats crossing the line in New Hampshire and re-registering as Republicans and voting in the primary. This is not about independents that vote Democratic every time, who are just trying to RF the Trump's chances to win the primary. It would be a wasted effort anyways. If the idea is that it's sort of a fait accompli and he's ahead by 60 points or whatever, what difference would it make if a small group, even, how would you motivate over, say, 5,000 people, 6,000, 10,000 people that you would need in some of these states to cross over and go through this process? There's no reason for it. Nobody's getting up and walking through the snow, to do anything even involving themselves. So like the low turnout in Iowa is a great example of this. These people did not show up. He won by a huge margin because a huge section of their own party has given up on either the process of voting entirely or the party until Donald Trump is no longer a thing. And watch, you watch when, like, 4 years from now, when there's they've kind of shaken the fever off and he's gone into the great doddering unknown or wherever he finds himself, there will be a resurgence of people who, this, renewed, like, neo-gops out there who will say, it feels good to be a Republican again, and we have a good, strong conservative base, blah, 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 whatever they're going to sell. But they'll come out of the woodwork. All these people who pretended they didn't vote for Trump and pretended they didn't vote for George W. Bush, for example, maybe even crossed over and voted for Obama to just kind of assuage their guilt about, starting the Iraq war and his response to any number of things, or Cheney or any of these things. They're going to come back out, they'll go, all right, now I've done my penance and my time in the desert. Now I'll come home to and we'll revive the value of the giant R. And wear it, I'll back to liking my sports team again, which is, right. But let me read you a quote real quick, Johnny Million. And you tell me if this was said, and you obviously know this is going to be it's going to come across as like a trick question. So I don't suspect you'll get it wrong, but play along. Okay. This is did a Democrat or Republican say this?
Okay.
This person is talking about Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House. So okay. Put the Bible down and get to work. I'm tired of hearing about your biblical worldview. If that's what a committed Christian does, you're going to lead young men to start looking at Islam.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Now, obviously, those are the words of someone who's on the absolute fringes of the fringe, clearly, and not somebody who formerly worked in the White House, let's say, hint, 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 or was even, pardoned by a president. That's Steve Bannon talking about Mike Johnson.
Wow.
Yeah. put the Bible down and get to work. I'm tired of hearing about your biblical worldview. If that's what a committed Christian does. And again, this is over a continuing resolution. This is budgetary BS. And they don't have the votes to change the budget. They just do not. There is right now, I want to say it's like they've got technically a 2-vote majority, and that is and the Freedom Caucus are trying to like stranglehold every other Republican to not vote for the immigration bill. You know, they're still smarting over the voting on the Infrastructure Act. And you got a lot of Republicans out there who would like to get, I guess, reelected. The ones that aren't dropping out, or the ones that aren't in a super red district who can kind of count on it. They don't even have to work at it. They run unopposed by the other party almost every time. Those folks, for some reason, think that all their choices in Congress are binary, and they can't figure out why the vast majority of their fellow congresspersons are not going along with their harebrained scheme to crash the government. They seem genuinely confused. Chip Roy, of all of them, seems like continually just flummoxed by the idea that not everybody else can just count on a 60 to 70% red district all the time, or can ignore the growing turn in the vote caused by extremist policies like going after Roe v. Wade, settled law, and they decide finally, and Trump and these other guys, and we got to take a break. It's House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. These guys seem to have gotten the totally wrong message from the lack of a red wave, and Trump is, for lack of a better word, trumpeting his is getting rid of Roe v. Wade, like he didn't get the memo. Like they don't see the train coming. And when you have pollsters like Rasmussen running out there and going, we polled 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats and 50 independents. And while Democrats win the vast majority of the independents, it's an even swath between Democrats and Republicans as far as how the vote could go. And therefore, it's a 5% margin, and Trump might even be up. In areas where people aren't even identifying as Republican anymore, where they're not even bothering to vote. Even the people who clamor and say, I can't wait to vote for Donald Trump, half of them aren't going to vote. It's bizarre. He's talked them out of it. He spent 3 years telling them, what's the point?
Yeah.
And the result...
And now, every time you stick a microphone in front of him, he is not awe-inspiring.
No, not at all. Although, unless you're Nikki Haley, who I guess congratulations to her on being the Speaker of the House. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Tonight, Sexy Liberal, sexyliberal.com/tour. If you want to come see us, we're coming to your town. There's some dates that are going to be announced this week. I'm very excited. We'll be back. So, let's see. I'm going to open that. And I'm going to open this. This guy. There we go. Like that, man, I got to say that like, it isn't even that he mixes up her name, is that he does it like a half a dozen times. Like he's hammering.
Never reports the crowd.
Yeah.
By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley. You know, did you know they destroyed all of the information, all of the evidence, everything? Deleted and destroyed all of it, because of lots of things. Like Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people.
Grandpa, if you can just eat the carrots,
60
I can
seconds,
get you
yes.
your pie.
Yeah. Just like, that's bad.
Yeah.
I wish I should. I'll see if I can find the link up here. But Biden gave remarks. I'll talk about it on the air. Like,
Okay.
Coming back. Hi, chat room. Hit the like. Let everybody know we're here. That really helps out.
Hit that
Just saying.
like.
I'm just saying. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to the
many of
House
you know-
Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So I won't be able to call it up right away because I was talking about it during the break with Johnny Million. But Biden gave remarks to a bipartisan conference of mayors yesterday. About an hour-long speech. Regular remarks, with a teleprompter, but then, off the cuff, chit-chatting a little bit too. Sang happy birthday to Mayor Pete. By the way, can we just, for a moment, Johnny Million, you and I, it's Paul Stanley's birthday today. And can I just say, happy birthday, Paul Stanley. We love you. What a great
legend.
True legend, good man, great talent, a lovely human being on all fronts. It's been, the couple of times I've run into him, where, and the shocking fact that he knew my name, without me prompting it was just extraordinary.
That's insane.
It's crazy. Yeah. He actually called out to me in a hallway in Miami at a radio station when my back was turned. Like he knew I was there because I'd just been talking, just a sweetheart, really talented guy, works really hard, gives a damn about the fans, has always been, I would say he's the gold standard that changed how bands treat their fans, because his constant hammering of that point in every interview since 1976 meant that you were either at that standard or below it, period. And everybody, every band member you hear, talking about, if it wasn't for the fans, we wouldn't even be here and all that stuff. Country artists, they're all copying that. Garth Brooks, as big a Kiss fan as he is, all of his, his fan talk is like direct quotes from Paul Stanley. And he means it. I'm not saying he doesn't mean it, but Paul raised that awareness especially. And I just like honoring the people who show up and spend the most valuable commodity in their life with you, which is their time.
Yep.
It shouldn't be a lot of work for artists to recognize that, but it often is. Yep. And his contempt for the I think it was the "I want to be alone" crowd.
Oh yeah.
It is directly related to that. So happy birthday, Paul Stanley. Fantastic. And happy birthday to Pete Buttigieg, whose birthday was yesterday. And Biden and everybody in the room sang happy birthday to him. Now, the reason I bring this up is because Biden, he, in these remarks, he's talking to, there's mayors from Republican and Democratic cities all gathered together to talk about a myriad of issues, infrastructure, immigration, crime, all that kind of stuff. And it was a pretty far-reaching speech. But there were a couple of times in it where he not only talked about the people that were in the teleprompter that he was specifically calling out in the speech, but he also just kind of off the cuff pointed out like 9 or 10 people in the crowd and was like, Sam Johnson and Gary Winsbury's over here. It's like, good to see you, pal. And like he's just naming all these randos that are not only some of them not the mayors, but like people on their staff, right? And he's just
people that can't do something for him.
Yes, right. People that have nothing to do with doing favors for him. And he makes this joke at one point, which was there were 2 points in it that I thought were highlights. One was he makes this joke where he's like, he goes, I ran for office in D.C. because local politics is really hard because everybody knows where you live and they think you can do stuff you can't. So they want stuff that it's way above your pay grade and you can't do it, funny. And so they knock on your door. Why can't you fix this? And like, because I'm I'm an alderman. Can't do that. Yeah. Right. But and then the other one was he talks about the infrastructure bill and how most of these Republicans who are against it, when they say, they're against the infrastructure bill, he's like, okay, well, see you at the ribbon cutting, see you at the groundbreaking. Right. Which he does every time. And at one point, there had been this kind of side conversation about Donald Trump, and he goes, it was like the elephant in the room, and the idea being is that Trump was always like challenging him to whatever, this and that, like have a debate or just doing something, I don't know, running a flight of stairs with him or some silliness, which Trump would fail at miserably. But he goes, at one point, he's just making remarks and he goes, I know. Well, tell the former president I'm busy right now, which is the idea, is that that's the joke around the White House, is that, every time Trump says something, they're busy passing a bill. They're busy getting stuff actually done, and the weird part is, and I don't know how, I guess
I don't
we'll
like
see.
it. I feel like they're up to something.
Right. They are up to something. They're up to like saving the economy post a major crash caused by world events, which is exactly what Obama had to do in the first 4 years of his presidency. By the way, the S&P just closed at an all-time high. The Dow keeps breaking records. Now, we know that both of those things aren't necessarily the economy, but they sure are the economy when Republicans are in charge.
Yeah.
That's I think, the thing that stands out for most people. And I think that's why you bring it up. Why we bring up the stock market is not necessarily that this is an all-in indicator. I'll tell you why. Because there are multiple ways you can say specifically the administration is doing good things for the American people. There are ones that the Republicans will either balk at, criticize, or flat out just deny, or they think is a bad thing that the rest of us think is a good thing. For example, Biden just forgave another $5 billion in student loans for 74,000 borrowers. These are people who in the public service loan forgiveness program should have had their stuff forgiven, but for snags and issues, some of them related to COVID, some of them related to just paperwork, just effectively just went, you're good. And these are nurses, teachers, firefighters, people in public sector, people who do jobs that are, that are beneficial overall to the society as large. And so the public service loan forgiveness program has been around for a long time to support those kind of things, because we need more nurses and we need more EMTs and we need, teachers and firefighters and the like. So if they had to get a degree to do it, in many ways, it's the equivalent of when a company levels up their employees and pays them to take continuing education courses. My mom, as a nurse, had to take continuing education courses as a nurse, and there's a cost to that, but the government absorbs most of it because we need them. We need nurses to be up to date, right? So some of these were even more expansive, and so Biden simply just used the ability that he does have to forgive those loans. That, I think, that's a win. But the Republicans are not going to see that as a win. They're not going to see that as, him promises made, promises kept, him keeping within the limits of his abilities as president. He can't do everything, but he's doing everything he can. And but the stock market is one of those areas where they seem to think that was the indicator. You watch that thing, Trump with his whole it was going up like a rocket ship. Or,
the numbers should skyrocket downward.
Or whatever the nonsense he was talking about. And now, all of a sudden, and I mean, Trump even gave away the game. During his presidency, he said, his numbers were fake until I got into office, and now they're real. I think they're real numbers when I'm here. And that is the game. That is ultimately what they're talking about. And by the way, CSL, thank you for doing that. I have the mayor's video. I simply did not have it queued up to the point where he makes that point, and that's the hard part. So, anyways, Biden yesterday in this doing the regular work of a president, having this bipartisan meeting with all the huge groups of mayors from all over the country, Republican and Democrat and Independent. Very normal gathering, quite frankly, wonderfully boring on so many fronts. And then they had, more of that. And then they had, little talking circles and breakout groups and administration officials from different areas making the rounds to each of these groups and hearing what they had to say. And while the president is dealing with the fact that Iran fired on Pakistan, and the Houthis are still trying to clog up the Suez Canal to basically destroy Egypt while pretending it has something to do with Israel and Gaza, which it does not at all. Just for the record, we got to take a break. But this regular normalcy in the face of real challenges is so refreshing, especially when you contrast it to Donald Trump's sweaty, angry, doddering nonsense about Nikki Haley and witch hunts and hoaxes and how he wouldn't have, E. Jean Carroll's not attractive enough to sexually assault, even though he mistook her for his ex-wife in an old picture in court during a deposition. You would think the contrast itself would just kind of settle it, and people would just know this and get on, but we still got to get out that vote, folks. We'll be back right after this. It's a bull market.
Thank you very much. Please sit down. My dad used to have an expression, quit while you're ahead.
And he walks off the stage. He literally, hold on, I'll see if I can show you the gag. I don't know if the screen works at all. Okay, yeah, because I had you cut out or whatever. That means I have to do this, just so you can see this. There you go. Oh, it hurts. Yeah, so this was the gag. This was the gag. Like this. Hold on one second. Let me try to play this.
Quit while you're ahead. Please sit down. My dad used to have an expression, quit while you're ahead.
We're back in 20.
Thank you.
I mean, come on. Physical humor.
Pretty good.
It is pretty solid. I mean, it's, as it goes, not a joke, folks. Not a regular joke. Just makes a cute physical gag. I believe it. He also apparently.
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Can I just say, on so many fronts, there's a lot of craziness going on in the world. And by the way, Philip Ittner will be joining us an hour or two from Ukraine to catch us up on what's going on there. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but apparently the Ukrainians on the down low have just been beyond. We've heard a lot about the individual fighting and just Russian soldiers, unfortunately, being thrown into a meat grinder by their leadership. But apparently at the same time, the Ukrainians are shooting down some major aircraft, like giant spy craft.
Crazy.
It's making huge gains in that regard, kind of under the radar while the rest of the world is distracted, which is what Vladimir Putin had ultimately wanted. It seemed like he wanted that distraction because he thought it would benefit him. Ultimately, it's not. It may have temporarily, but right now, not so much, because it has distracted the critics like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others and Matt Gaetz. It makes their arguments against Ukraine look watered down and like old news when everyone is sort of focused on Israel and Gaza and Iran and the Houthis and all that kind of stuff. It looks like they're still, in the same way that Trump is always harping about Afghanistan being the most embarrassing thing ever. To me, I got to say, the most embarrassing thing about Afghanistan was that we were still in for 21 years after he left office. Every day you stayed in past the point that you didn't need to be there anymore was embarrassing. The only excuse for staying longer was to try and coordinate an exit based on a plan that had been sabotaged from the very beginning by Donald Trump releasing a bunch of Taliban fighters ahead of the evacuation. Great plan. Here's a good idea. And I don't know why this never came up. And, far be it from little old me to kind of interject amongst the very, very fine, very smart people, the best people, hashtag the best people. Far be it from me to try to second guess these dum-dums. But I, having never read Art of the Deal, I would have floated a deal that, are you opening a beverage that's very loud, or are you learning to tap?
No, that's me snorting.
Oh, okay, really? That's
yeah,
amazing.
Full on snort.
That's amazing. I thought it sounded like a can opening. That's incredible.
Sometimes I sound like something else.
That's true. I don't need, look, I'll put the money in the stump. Just release my family. By the way, Johnny Million, I don't have to warn you. I have a particular set of skills. So,
yes. Do tell. I want to hear about your skills.
No, simmer down. So here's the plan. See if this works for you, Johnny Million. And again, Am I hashtag the best people by their standards? Probably not. Do I hashtag use the best words? Certainly on my regular stream I do, because I use my big boy vocabulary, which I can't use on the air. But for the record, here's what I would have done. Work with me on this. You're negotiating an exit with the Taliban about getting our people out of Afghanistan. We are going to leave Afghanistan. We know this. We're setting a date for us to get out. And the idea is, you leave us alone, we'll leave on this date. Okay, that's the first part of it. That was Trump's conditional surrender. That was his, like, we'll back out of the room. You know, it's the old Donald Trump is a living embodiment of the old Carlin joke. Things you never hear, do what you want to the girl, but leave me alone. That's right. Donald Trump is the living embodiment of that very thing. Here's what I'm saying. You're going to release 5,000 Taliban fighters. This guy says, okay, but these guys have to be released. I don't know about you, but especially with all this talk about you take the military out last, and Trump seems to hammer that, you take the military out, which, by the way, Biden did. They sent in 6,000 extra people for the evacuation, and the last people to leave were military, but whatever. I would have said to Abdul, I would have said, okay, we'll release those 5,000 fighters after we're out of the country. How about that? We're going to agree on this date that we'll be out of the country. And on that date, you don't do anything up to that point. We leave and your guys get out. Cool. We're not going to release them while our people are still in country. Sure. And while we're trying to extract our staff and the people who helped us, especially the people who you will kill for either supporting us during this or being women or gay or smart or both. And just in the art of the deal, that seems like that didn't occur to anybody. That didn't come up at a Trump strategy session about getting out of Afghanistan, other than, I guess the whole argument is, let's pretend to get out of Afghanistan, which was really the ploy, because the goal was never to get out. They were going to keep Bagram, they were going to keep Bagram forever, right? We're going to stay the biggest military base in the country, and we're just going to stay there, which is not leaving, for the record. It is not leaving. If you'll notice,
sort of leaving.
Yeah, we wound down the Iraq war, but we're not out of Iraq. You know what I mean? Technically speaking, nobody ever said. Even George W. Bush in his mission accomplished stuff wasn't, we're getting out, we're leaving Iraq. Nobody even talked about it like that. We have a military base to help stabilize the government there. We're there out of their permission, in the same way that we were there. We were in Okinawa for a time for the very same region, and now for secondarily strategic reasons. Still not out, though. That's not out. And the same thing happened in Afghanistan. No. Does it matter? No, because Donald Trump is ultimately not going to be president again, and he's a loony bird, and that's that. And I can't imagine that anybody thinks that he's going to come up with an actual functioning plan for anything anytime soon.
Just give him 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's good. Good point. You know what I mean? We'll revisit this in a couple weeks, Johnny Million. How about that? You did open a can, you crazy person. That's what that sounded like.
I opened it when I showed it before, when I was telling you all about it.
Oh, maybe there's a delay.
21-minute delay.
That's right. I blame the internet. Okay, so, yeah. So let's be abundantly, yes, Trump wanted to bring the Taliban to Camp David and all this stuff, and it never occurred to anybody in that White House. Maybe release the 5,000 fighters after we're gone, especially if you want to take every nut and every screw and every bolt and every whatever. This is silly. Meanwhile, in the fantasy land, the fantasy football version of Donald Trump's military, I don't even know if there's a doctrine. Is there a Trump doctrine? I think the Trump doctrine is let them have it and then let them have it, which is hit everybody, even if there's civilians in the way, and do not care. Don't, no heads up, no warning, no nothing. Just kill everybody in the area, and they shouldn't have. It's a sign of weakness if you let them know, and they'll just take advantage or whatever. And then after you do that, give that space to the Russians. After you clear, Syrians and Kurds out of a certain area, through drone strikes and other stuff, give the base to Russia to take over. If you're going to be in Africa as part of a UN peacekeeping force or whatever, just leave. We don't need to be there. What the heck for? They don't have anything we want. If we're supposed to keep the oil. If there's no oil to keep, then we get out and just leave it to the Wagner group to join in the fighting and just start engaging in war crimes. Because what's the difference? We don't care about those people. They ain't us. Josh in the chat is going, remind me why he released the prisoners? I don't know. I don't think he knows. I think it was just technically to kind of grease the deal. Do you think Abdul would have not taken the don't kill anybody and we'll leave by this date on its face? That's what they wanted. The 5,000 fighters, there was no material reason at all why you had to do that. It's bizarre. So anyways, we'll talk about some of the, because Philip Ittner's been through that area of the world a couple of times as well, and we'll address some of that. But, there are enough real challenges in the world. Most of them, by the way, teed up by Donald Trump while he was in office through his just total disregard for the realities of the world. Again, you can track back Yahweh Sinwar's idea of a fake ceasefire, where a rope-a-dope, where they could trick the Israelis into thinking that they were ready to normalize relations, to Donald Trump recognizing the Golan Heights, as Israeli territory, moving the embassy and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital. There was a reason why previous presidents were loath to do that or slow-moving in it as the two-state solution moved along, and he simply just blew it off. Why? Who cares? What difference does it make? It's not going to do anything. It's not going to. And ultimately, he's like, we did it and nothing happened. No, exactly what everyone knew would happen happened, except they were just more, I guess, strategic with it is all. Because a couple of weeks later, Yahweh Sinwar sends a letter to Benjamin Netanyahu that says, let's take a chance. He writes it in Hebrew. Take a chance on a conditional ceasefire. And he did. Netanyahu did. He took the bait. He actually, sucker that he is, said, yeah, let's try peace, like the maniac, genocidal psychopath that he is, apparently. He started allowing, you crazy person. You did it again. Is that another delay?
I don't know what I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
What kind of sound am I making that sounds like a pop can?
I don't know. The chat's going to back me up, though.
I have no idea what you're hearing.
Oh, quit it. Okay, so all during that part, like Sinwar sets up this thing where he's like, we're going to, see, the chat room heard it too. I'm not crazy. It sounded exactly like a can opening. So something's wrong with your cat, or we'll figure out somebody snuck into your house. They've jimmied a window, and it sounded like that because it's frozen. Now, for all the criticism against Benjamin Netanyahu, and the reasons for it are legion and worthwhile, he did take a chance on peace with Hamas about 5 years ago. And the answer, and that's where the whole Netanyahu's been funding Hamas, right? You've heard that. Netanyahu funded Hamas. Okay, one of the reasons was because they were trying to basically buy the peace and stabilize this in the same way that, other countries have tried to do this. And by the way, it worked with the PLO and the PA largely in the West Bank. But for all the settler dust-ups and stuff that they have, in general, especially compared to Gaza, there's not just missiles firing all the time, right? Out of the West Bank. It doesn't happen.
Right.
Partly because of the Jordanians and a bunch of other reasons. And it's hard to argue you're in an open-air prison in the case of the West Bank when the biggest border almost is the Lebanese border. So Netanyahu takes this chance on this, that this guy basically says on October 8th, we got you. We suckered you. This was never a real one. We used the money you sent and all that stuff to build up for this day, and we're going to keep doing it. And that's that. You're an idiot, and you believed that we were interested in peace because you're weak. So now, over the last couple of weeks, oddly enough, the conversation about whether or not there can be a two-state solution is in question once again, which it has been the entire time, or it would have been settled on a long time ago. And in large part, it's because of two things. The total untrustworthiness of Yahya Sinwar and the Hamas guys as basically suckering people into baiting them to look the other way, effectively pulling a Jamie Gum and pretending to wear a cast and asking somebody to help them get a sofa into the van, and then they end up in a well. That's the strategic.
I mean, it works, Hal.
It does.
Just don't knock it.
I don't say until you try it, you weirdo. No, but it does work. It absolutely does work. It only works though when your opponent is civilized. And there's this belief system that Donald Trump was uncivilized, and therefore he protected us from these kind of things. That he was this loose cannon that these folks, thought, okay, this will scare everybody into not doing stuff, which is not the case at all. All it does is go, we've got a friend in the White House. We can do stuff underground, and he will keep people off our back while we develop more nukes and do all kinds of stuff like that. So there is, the Middle East has been a mess my entire life, and I think during most people's time. And so it is hard to not look at the current state of affairs, as horrible as they are, as yet another, sort of like a high tide moment in this kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
Right, and I don't know where there's an out for it, simply because when you boil it down to it, the issue is magic rocks. Folks on either side of that conflict think that some rocks on Earth are more magic than others, and they want to be near the magic rocks, and that is a recipe for disaster, and it always will be. Religious beliefs all aside, I would categorize that as superstition. Superstition says this is a magic rock, and if I'm near it, I'm closer to God. That's not religion. As a matter of fact, that I guess it adds natural physics to the existence of a post-temporal or metatemporal metaphysical being. It makes no sense. We're going to get into a giant conversation about metaphysics, and then I'll start doing Steve Martin bits. We won't have time for this. At any rate, folks, not a joke. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. And then, of course, at the top of the hour, Philip Ittner will be joining us from Ukraine. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Literally, the Houthis. There's this video of them. I'll see if I can find the other video of them. The Houthis have been giving the Nazi salute. Hold on. There's an old video of them doing it, and yeah.
I do not approve.
Yeah, me neither. Let's see. Houthi.
Coming back in 15.
Yeah, thank you.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So it is not particularly difficult to find the videos of the Houthis standing in lines in formations giving the Nazi salute. Yeah. And you would think that would be kind of an automatic tap out. Like, how about no?
It's a heck of a deal breaker for a lot of people.
Yeah, that would be the one area where you're like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. There's been over the years there's been a lot of talk about how the Middle East has a curious fascination. Certain countries have a curious fascination with the Nazi regime. Some of them strictly and only because of how much they share a hatred for Jews. Right? That really is the primary one. Yeah, I mean, they have a what's not to like reflex around the Nazis and Nazi memorabilia and stuff. And again, in Damascus in Syria, you can buy stamps with Hitler's face on it. It's and there's an odd kind of historical, the Caucasus Mountains being the root of where Caucasians come from, Iran's name effectively being the land of the Aryan, means the land of the Aryan people, that the Aryans are believed to be these white Persians through there that are above the Arabs, and this back and forth between the two of them. But the only thing that they equally hated, the Aryans and the Arabs both together shared, was a hatred for the Jews, which refused sublimation and slavery. And I guess through the whole
full disclosure, that's Hal and I met in a group in high school with many of these same beliefs.
That's true. I mean, because and it wasn't, we weren't there.
Activity.
It was, yeah. And it was, it was. I thought it was an ironic group at first. Turns out it wasn't at all. And I obviously quit. And Johnny's still got his decoder ring, but But honestly,
I'm not gonna miss any messages. Maybe they'll change their minds.
Right? Yeah. Like hope springs eternal. You got to see the light in everyone. But yeah, he's kidding, folks. This is an absolute absurd joke. There's some folks that are like, "Wait, what?" In the chat room. No. So the odd part is that how many, what I would say is people who envision themselves or state themselves being leftists or left of anything. I guess left of Donald Trump qualifies as left for, the Glenn Becks of the world, but or people who view themselves as progressives. Anybody who calls themselves a progressive and supports the Houthis in any form has got to kind of answer to this whole thing about why are you supporting this group who stands in long lines? It says on their flag, "Death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews."
What a messy flag!
It is. It's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of. I mean, it's more like
some colors and symbols on there.
Yeah, no, that's not enough, Johnny. People can interpret colors and symbols many different ways. It leaves too much room for ambiguity. You got to appreciate their directness. You know what I mean? We got our stars and our stripes and the red stripes and the white stripes.
What does it mean?
Yeah, but what does it really mean? Instead, they just have it's basically, imagine if the Unabomber's manifesto was stuck to a flagpole. That's basically what the Houthi flag is. Yeah. And it's not that uncommon. And somebody in the chat room said it's, we're in a world divided and there's sort of an us against them. But I want to remind everybody, this is not sort of an abstract. This is not us against them in kind of like a territorial dispute where we're fighting over orange groves and everybody needs to eat. Right? This is there is a mix. And I think this is an important thing. We'll talk about this with Phil when he comes back. But I think philosophically speaking, There is a belief system in the Western world that the differences between countries, nation states, flags and borders are all a mental construction that don't really have any meaning. Which, never mind the sort of racist and culturally dismissive attitude of that says that other countries with their kind of extreme views of how the world should be run, insofar as women and female genital mutilation and gays and the stoning of adulterers and all that isn't a profound belief on their part, that they could just shrug it off the way you can shrug off your beliefs that you don't know you carry around all the time, like rule of law and equality under the law and those kind of things, which you take for granted, right? That's what those nation states, those borders, those flags are actually about. And so when people say that human to human, there's no difference between people, they're kind of relating to the philosophies that were laid out when most wars were resource wars, specifically about foodstuffs and the like. These are also, by the way, the people who mock the idea of Thanksgiving, but we'll get to that later, I suppose, or somewhere around November. But the idea that somehow it doesn't matter if we just drop all this stuff, everybody would just get along, is not the case and has never been the case. And so at some point, you do have to say, well, you support the rights of, right now, women in the United States are in the fight of their lives from a rights perspective, because that right that so many took for granted, that they should have control over their bodies, and that if an ectopic pregnancy that very well may kill them or make them unable to have healthy children in the future, that cannot be removed in certain states because of the faux religious beliefs of a certain group of people who want to control women in this country. And that was allowed because people shrugged off the threat that Donald Trump stated specifically in the Chris Matthews interview. There's going to have to be a punishment for the woman if she gets an abortion. They just shrugged it off. Yep. Differences to make. The very people who recognize there's a very distinct line between what Republicans, especially current Republicans, believe and what the vast majority of Americans believe, quite frankly, and certainly Democrats. There's a very distinct line. And if there isn't for you, I don't know why I should listen to you decry being for or against voting in any way. I don't know what argument you're making. If there's no difference between you and a Republican, I don't want to hear an argument about Democratic internal priorities. Get out of here. But if you can recognize that there's a distinct belief system between two parties in the United States, especially now under these things, you can recognize there are distinct political, social, and religious differences between countries as well. And your standard either is worth protecting and having, or it ain't. And that has to be part of this discussion. We are not talking about two tribes fighting over a valley where the apples grow. And look, we both need apples, and if we just learn to get along, we could share them and perhaps even grow more apples together. Right. That is the level of intellectual, spiritual, and philosophical depth I'm hearing coming from conversations about the differences in the world right now. And it, unfortunately, not only does it kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, almost quite literally, or into the oven, I suppose, if you're a Hamas supporter, like some of these folks. But it also sets up a situation where you don't even recognize the values that you allegedly want for your fellow Americans. Right? And there's a recognition that if Democrats stopped fighting for women's rights and gay rights and the rights of the poor and unions and that kind of stuff, does anybody think Republicans would go, okay, truce? We were only fighting against these things because you guys were fighting for them. Does anybody believe that? And so why would that apply to, especially wars that have been going on, fights for thousands of years about the modernity against ancient beliefs? it's absurd. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Philip Ittner's going to join us.
Phil.
Oh, there he is. He's going to be hanging out in the background. We're going to bring him in and have a conversation about what's happening in Ukraine, and certainly we will discuss Iran, Pakistan, Syria, all these places, because it's all wound up right now, and partly because we've been shrugging it off. We'll be back right after this.
I got distracted by my cat.
I understand. I often get distracted by your cat. All right. And unfortunately, hold on, I got to bring in copy this. And then
Does your cat ever come into your workplace and just start intentionally tripping over all of your tables to show that they could
ever?
Wanted to?
Oh my God. I like half the time I think that's all Chip wants to do is just kind of like short out the entire
Yeah, she goes walking under the table to like where the power strip is, where everything is plugged in, and goes, "Oh my goodness! Oh, I tripped over that."
What?
Too.
Look what I'm doing! Oh, look what I'm doing here! My.
Oh no!
There. Hey, there he is. Okay, Phil is.
Can't hear you, Phil. Can't hear.
We don't hear you, Phil. We don't hear you, Phil. We hear your mic. Hold on.
Your mic looks awesome.
We see that you're talking, but there is no sound coming from your direction.
And you can hear us.
Yep. He's still talking. Keep talking till something comes in.
There we go.
Hey.
There we go.
Excellent.
What were we going to say?
I was just going to say, it's like those cats that like sit there and look at you as they're pushing something off the table, just going,
"Oh my God!"
And what are you going to do? It's the nature. It's
I
like
saw
going
the
under
other
your
day
table.
that said, "Hey, it's my cat's birthday," and it was like a table that just had like ashtrays and glasses and everything set right to the edge, so they can just go push everything off.
Right. Oh my God. Chip does it to wake me up in the morning.
It's the eyeballing you. It's the eyeballing you that does it for me. It's like looking at you as they push it off the table.
Right. I'm giving you a chance.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too, is that. There she is. That's the interesting part. Is that Dino Badala had a comic on his show. She wrote a book called "Why Your Cat's an Asshole," I think it was called. Anyways, and she goes, "You basically live with a scientist because cats are always experimenting. They test things to see how far they can go, and so that's that whole thing. Like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. Oh, that fell. What if these other things will fall? That's interesting. Shit, gravity's amazing.
Cause and effect all day long.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll put this over here. Hold on one second.
Thank you, Christopher. Good to see you, buddy.
Hold on. How you doing, brother? By the way.
Another week in the war.
Yep.
You look good.
Still, thank you. Pissed off at the GOP. Pissed off at playing games with Ukrainian lives. Very frustrating. Right. Embarrassing.
But hey, you can score points.
Right.
But trying to, just
a real quick question. People in the chat want to know about your shirt.
Oh, this is my this is a fleece that was given to me by Dr. Erwin Redliner,
right?
Who runs along with his wife Karen. They run the Ukrainian Children's Action Project, which does a lot of good work here, supporting children who are victims of the war, whether that's psychological or physical, prosthetics. Medical supplies, and emergencies, supplies, that kind of stuff. Dr. Redliner he used to run a
back in 20
pediatric ICU in New York, and so he knows what's needed here, and so he comes over periodically, and then he has a team here and stuff like that, and I occasionally help out, and he was kind enough to give me this.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a worthwhile foundation.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome to the show, Philip Ittner. Glad you can be with us, sir. So much going on in the world, and your expertise about these things will be immensely valuable, I think. But first and foremost, how you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I mean, I'm a little frustrated with America's lack of support, or this roadblock in their support for Ukraine and people playing domestic politics.
Yeah.
While Ukrainians are dying, it's not good. It's not good. So I'm hoping for an break in the impasse, but we'll see. I saw Crenshaw came out. Dan Crenshaw just came out in the last 24 hours or something, and said, as far as Republicans go, Crenshaw is a guy who, I could at least have a debate with him.
Right.
And said, how that there's a bill that's sitting there. And, do we want to resolve the situation on the border, or do we just hate the Ukrainians and want to see Putin successful? What are these two things? Because the bill is there for the border, which is what the Republicans say is holding
allegedly
up their support.
Right.
Allegedly.
Right.
It's sitting right there, but it includes support for Ukraine. So what's the problem here? What's the issue? Or is it cynically, is it just they don't want to resolve the problem on the border because they can run through the election period, running on that. So, meanwhile, every day Ukrainians are dying.
Right. No doubt. I have to say, I think there's a reality of, kind of a mix of both. On the one hand, the vast majority of the Republicans are simply like, if we give this win to Joe Biden this year, it eats up their argument. I've said this before. Okay, so I think they're screwed either way, because if they vote against this, then they lose their argument that they had a bill on the floor. Everybody said it was historical. This is comprehensive immigration reform. They got a lot more than they actually wanted. Biden's actually giving them a little more changes in the asylum rules that they would like than is probably useful. Maybe even fails a constitutional test, which is fascinating. And sort of counting on that happening so that they can get the rest of this through. But it covers all the bases, and it's not ultimately, it's a great win for it's what everybody wants, quite frankly. It's not just what the party wants, and I think that's the problem they have. But it will solve a lot of these problems in an election year, and he's already done infrastructure. And so to dunk on them by passing infrastructure and immigration reform, while the stock market's raising, while the unemployment's down, it's just politically, it's just tying their hands. On the other hand, a bunch of them want to get reelected, and they need this. So if they vote against this thing, they lose their argument. If they vote for it, they lose their argument. There really is no way out for the Republicans in this thing. And as long as Biden keeps the Ukrainian funding tied to it, it's going to go through.
Certainly in the Senate. Yeah. I mean, but again, the problem is a small, when I say small, it is a vocal and minority, adamant minority within the House. The MAGAs in the House.
Yeah.
It's just,
but they're also losing. They're losing a ton of power right now.
And they're losing a ton of power. They've painted themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
They're the dog that caught the car. Now they don't know what to do with it.
Yesterday
and Roe was so devastating for them. Again, another instance of them catching the car and not knowing what to do with it. I mean, the modern Republican Party is just.
It's having the same hard fade that Donald Trump is having.
I
don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the Nikki Haley mix around, but one of the reasons he confused Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi multiple times in the same sentence, but partly because he's got Nikki Haley on the brain, and Nikki Haley is actually pro-Ukraine support. I mean, one of the things she learned when she was at the UN was that this is serious stuff. And that it's one of the primary reasons why she decided to run. The irony that Joe Biden ran because it was about the soul of America, and he was seeing Donald Trump say very fine people about folks. And Nikki Haley's essentially, from a Republican standpoint at least, running on the same point.
And she has also been eyewitness to what it is that Russia does with its power in the UN, especially in the Security Council. They are disruptive. They're constantly obstructionist, and they play really dirty tricks and games within the UN. And she saw that firsthand. And I've seen a number of press conferences with her when she's talking about what it is that Putin's Russia does, and it's like, well, clearly this is somebody who sees this, whatever.
Who do you think?
Whatever line she's
right. Who do you think is behind getting South Africa to file charges against the Israelis in the International Criminal Court? I mean, the purpose of that is to make a mockery of the court itself by the South Africans, specifically on behalf of the Russians, because he's got a warrant out. If you make everybody throw up their hands and go, this is just about airing grievances, or tit for tat fighting across stuff instead of actually dealing with this in a responsible way. By the way, after it's over, because the reality is, the fear of the Russians is that after the fighting stops in Ukraine and the Russians are defeated, the next step is the ICG. We're looking at a major Nuremberg moment on the earth, as we go back through this. And that,
Well, and especially if, and I fully do believe that there is, despite some comments that have been made this week, I still believe that Ukraine ultimately is going to regain an awful lot of the territory it lost. Even I am hopeful for 91 borders. I don't think that's crazy.
Nope.
And as Ukraine liberates cities and towns, as they progress in regaining their territory, we're going to hear some awful stories. We're going to hear some really awful stories because, I mean, we already have heard, whether it was Hostomel or Bucha or, take your pick, the way the Russians come into a town, the first thing they do is round up anybody who is a leader in civil society or is identified as a quote unquote Ukrainian nationalist, which just means they believe in a Ukraine. They round them up and they torture, imprison. They have draconian methods, like you have to surrender your Ukrainian passport if you want a pension. If you are an older person and you need a pension from the state, you can no longer get your pension on a Ukrainian passport. You have to have a Russian passport. That kind of stuff, all the way up to executions and mass murder and things like that, which we saw, of course, in Bucha and other places. We're going to see more of that. I mean, I shudder to think what Mariupol, if and when, and I still believe it'll happen, when Mariupol in particular is liberated. We're going to hear some terrible stories out of Mariupol.
Well,
Russians are brutal.
Yeah. Well, right now, let's the Wagner Group is helping the RSF in Sudan. Okay, they are providing military support and soldiers on the ground because they are smuggling gold out of Darfur. This has been an ongoing thing for a couple of years, and since the civil war fighting in there has broken out anew, it just ratcheted it up. And there's a new United Nations report that as many as 15,000 people were killed in one village in West Darfur, just slaughtered. And the Wagnerites are part of that. And this has happened since Vladimir Putin has said, no, they're ours. They're not a paramilitary group that's running on their own. We built them. They're ours. He's basically
they follow our orders. We give them instructions.
Can you imagine if the U.S. Navy SEALs went in and slaughtered 15,000 people in a village in this year? Like what would happen in the streets?
We did have that happen. We did not that.
Right.
We had Blackwater. We had contract fighters in Iraq. I remember it. I was in the Baghdad bureau when the firefight that ended up in a massacre in a square in Baghdad, when a bunch of Yahoo Blackwater guys came under fire and they panicked and started just randomly shooting people in a busy square in Baghdad. So we have had that happen, but the difference is we held them to account.
Right.
And after that, Blackwater was actually, if I'm remembering correctly, they were shortly after that expelled from being.
They were. He had to rebrand and change the name. Remember, this is Betsy DeVos's brother runs this thing. So they had to. And they're not. Which ironically they named it this. Like the name is the same as
the
Xi Jinping
something.
But it's like XI, which is, and then you've got Elon Musk naming his thing with an X. I don't know. It's like I don't know. All these guys who grew up, taking supplements that have an X on them for testosterone seem to name everything that way. But again,
we held them to account,
right?
Whereas
we did
Wagner is
not
held to account, and as a matter of fact, it's promoted, and given another assignment.
That's right. At no point did we go, these are our guys, and officially call them in. As far as us supporting them, after they had started to do this.
We held a full investigation. Now, you can argue whether or not the investigation was properly managed or not.
Right.
When that happened in Iraq back in, I don't know if that was 06 or 08 or something like that.
Yeah.
We held a full investigation, and we did and then there were punitive damages that were sent out and things like, look, there is no
comparison.
There's no proper compensation for a thing like that.
No, right.
But at least we tried. Whereas again, on the Russian side of the equation, not only are they not being held to account when they do things like slaughter an entire village, they're promoted. They're supported. They're helped. It's a very different mentality.
Imagine, if you would, and we got to take a break, and we'll come back right after this. We're talking to Philip Ittner live in Kiev, and Johnny Million is farming questions from the chat so that because the chat room has some questions for you. It's been a little bit. 15,000 people die in this one particular village, just one village in West Darfur. 15,000 people killed by the RSF, supported by Wagner mercs. After. Not during the time where like the Blackwater guys did something awful and the U.S. government said, you're no longer working for us, beat it. The opposite happened. These deaths occurred and Russia hugged them closer, said, these are our guys. This is our mission. This is what we want. And it is just the amount of brutality that's going on there right now. And I keep trying to make people pay more attention to it, and it just kind of gets dusted over in the same way the Ukraine war is kind of taking a backseat. And it seems to me there's some folks out there that only care about a conflict when a Jew is on the other side of the rifle. That's the only time their ears perk up. It's really bizarre. Because it's not comparable. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more. Johnny Million, he's on YouTube and Twitch a couple times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think now.
That's right.
Twitch.tv/It's Johnny Million. We'll be back. So, the people forget that South Africa is part of the whole, where the BRICS crowd, with Russia trying to create this crypto and all this kind of stuff. So they have been, using, authoritarian military capabilities to help the South African regime keep control of everybody there as that place is shit the bed.
Did you see this? There's an interview with a kid in, I don't know where he is. He's somewhere in Russia. I say kid, he's like a 19-year-old, 20-year-old.
Right.
And it's making the rounds. And so I didn't want to talk about it on air, but I think it's legit, but it's an interview with a kid and he's like, oh, are you going to join the army? Are you going to sign up if there's another mobilization? And he says, yeah, cause it's cool to be a patriot for your country, which is okay, fine. But then he says, and plus, they'll send me to a place where I can just kill with impunity and I'm not going to be held accountable. I can just kill people. I can do whatever I want. And I don't want to make too much of an anecdotal one-off interview with some kid who may have said something stupid. But it's having lived in Russia and having spent time covering this part of the world so much, there's a thing about that runs through Russian society where it's like, if I could just live completely lawless, I absolutely would love that. That would be great.
Yeah.
You know, where I could just do whatever I want.
Well, it's an ad absurdum it's libertarian ad absurdum. It is the absolute absurdity of, a narco-capitalism, a Wild West. Everybody thinks they're going to be the fastest gun in the West. Every single one of these idiots thinks that if society breaks down, they're going to be the tough guy.
It's coming back.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also there's violence.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So on the Ukrainian front, the Ukrainians shot down an A-50 aircraft, a spy craft, over
using the Patriot.
Yeah, over Sochi. That's like close to Sochi, which is that's a distance. That's a long way.
Well, and they only have this happened, I want to say maybe 4 days ago, maybe even as much as 5 days ago. The Ukrainians shot down 2 command and control aircraft. In essence, what we would have is an AWACS, which monitors, everything in the battle space, whether it's on the air or in radio transmissions, and they only have 10 of these things. The Antonov 50s, I think they were called. It was an Antonov and an Ilyushin. The Ilyushin landed, limped back to Rostov or somewhere. But there were published pictures of how much damage was done to this thing. It's not going to be flying anytime soon. The Antonov, of which the Russians only have 10 of these things, is now at the bottom of the Sea of Azov, along with the head of the Black Sea fleet, the Moskva. It's collecting coral. But this thing is a major blow to them. And again, it looks like it was a Patriot missile system that was used to knock it out of the sky. And when Zelensky was in Davos during this week, he was singing the praises of the Patriot. And then short on the heels of that, we see a Bradley. I mean, everybody who pays attention to the Ukraine war, I'm sure, has seen this footage of a infantry fighting vehicle, Bradley, taking on one of the top tanks of Russia, which infantry fighting vehicles are not supposed to take on tanks.
No, right. That was a big deal. It was a viral moment in the last couple of weeks.
David and Goliath stuff. And these 2 Bradleys disabled, and ultimately, I'm sure the tank was destroyed, but the crew had to get out. I mean, it was very impressive. We can give them good kit. The Patriot is a great missile system. The Bradley is a great infantry fighting vehicle. I'm not sure about our Abrams tanks because there's lots of problems with the Abrams, but the Germans could give them more Leopards. There's been a dispute within Germany about giving them cruise missiles, a cruise missile system they have called the Taurus. So it's not just America that's kind of dragging its feet. The French have announced that they're giving 40 cruise missiles of the same kind of the Shadow Storm, Shadow Strike that the Brits have. There's a joint British-France cruise missile system that is the one that hit the amphibious landing vehicle about 3 weeks ago in Novorossiysk or Feodosia. Those things are really, really powerful as a powerful weapon system. And the Europeans, in some ways, are kind of starting to realize they have to, while America works out its dysfunction and dithers and has this domestic stuff, the Europeans are starting to step up.
They're backfilling.
They're backfilling, and the Brits have done some stuff. So I'm not pessimistic about the course of the war. I don't think things are going to change just because of what's happening on the Hill. It's just, it's not our position. It's not what our position should be. We should be giving every weapon system that we possibly can so that these guys can push
defend
Russia
themselves.
back
Right.
Because
Agreed.
if we don't, they'll just go further. They'll attack more.
The alignment of Russia and Iran right now, is a curious mix of them setting sort of a dog off the leash in their mind, and just winding something up and assuming it will go in the direction that they want. And then there's this kind of odd scatter stuff. So right now, it's sort of along the lines of the bombing of Nord Stream 2. There's this back and forth about, the U.S. did it and they controlled it and we're ratcheting things up and it's going to be World War III because the U.S. attacked civilian infrastructure using proxies, blah, 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 all this back and forth. Same thing happened when 2 bombs went off at the funeral procession for Qasem Soleimani in Iran. These are I think there were suicide vests inside cars or whatever, but ultimately this idea that somehow they believe that they bombed this, the Israelis did it or the U.S. did it or both of us, or is there a difference, hand in glove, blah, blah, blah. Turns out it was ISIS. Turns out it was very distinctly the ISIS-K, and one of their subsidiaries, the same group that killed our people and a bunch of Afghans in the last day of the Afghan evacuation. And so Iran's response was to bomb a place in Syria, a place in Iraq, and a place in Pakistan. The Syrian spot, they said, was an Israeli spy site or whatever, which, sure it is. Whatever. It's a gray building in the middle of nowhere. Call it what you want. And that's the greatest thing about hitting an intelligence target is, how do you know? You know what I mean? You can always say, we blew up a CIA black site helicopter. You can't find it because it evaporated. Good for you. Yeah. But the part where they struck Pakistan is probably the single biggest ratchet up of any of this stuff that was sort of, you'll notice Trump's not going, if I was in office, Iran never would have fired on Pakistan. ISIS never would have bombed the funeral procession, right? The way he's saying Ukraine would have been
that's far too complex.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't even think
crowd, the glazed over look in their eyes would be like, who are we supposed to show up for?
Right.
Pakistan or
Iran. They don't know. Right. That's what I mean. Unless there's a clearly distinct value point for him as a person, which would be Russian support, ultimately, I think, in his mind. And he doesn't get the whole alignment between Russia and Iran because he wants Iran to be the main bad guy, but Russia to be the main good guy. And so either this is a big piece of theater or he's just stupid.
Well,
or both.
Yeah.
Right. He's a puppet on a string.
Look, the west side of like there's that whole region. Eastern Iran, Western Afghanistan, Pakistan, that whole mix there. There's a lot of bubbling ethnic issues and religious issues that are there. So, I mean, Islam, as we well know, but it's not just Sunni and Shia, but Islam is not a monolith.
Right.
There are lots of subdivisions within all, both Sunni and Shia.
Right.
So, look.
And by the way, talk about a belief in borders and whether we should all be able to get to and what I would call the Imagineer crowd who think that John Lennon's song is not a song about hope, but a constitution in and of itself, that it'll just magically happen if everybody could just imagine hard enough. Like it's like the opening song for the movie The Secret. The reality is, those two sides are in an exchange. Like, that's why I laughably, when we talk about the United States has never been more divided than it is now, is laughable compared to the divisions that we're looking at amongst Shia and Sunni, and there are ISIS variants that are fighting each other for not being violent enough. And neither one in those exchanges, neither one is going to go, you know what, peace, we're good, ever. Like, it just doesn't happen. So the question is, what do you do in that response? Do you just keep them, make sure they don't get weapons that could hurt anybody but their own internal fighting? Is that what it looks like? Is that effectively what we're having to do with the Houthis? We don't give a crap about the Houthis and the Yemenis ultimately until they start firing outside their country. I mean,
it's news bulletin. That part of the world is incredibly complex. Not to say that this part of the world, but conflict is often incredibly complex. It's just, human beings and how we deal with this kind of stuff is incredibly complex. And as far as it comes to this part of the world, which is far more my expertise than it is down in the Gulf or down in, even though I lived in Pakistan, I spent years in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and all the rest of it. But because I speak Russian, I'm far more comfortable speaking about this part of the world and having lived here as well. It is incredibly complex when people go to war with one another over grievances that have been there for hundreds of years. It's just something that Americans don't understand because we don't have that history, whereas here
we take that for granted.
Are just really ancient.
Right. Yes. We take that a fight is a fight is a fight for granted, and it simply is not. Let's take a break. When we come back, there's a power that the president has, which is called excess defense articles, that is stymieing Republicans' efforts to try and shut down our support for Ukraine. I'll explain it in a second, and it is one of the ways that we are under the table kind of helping Ukraine as well. We'll be back.
I was a little disappointed to hear the news from the Ukrainian side of them saying that they're going to focus on aggressive defense. Which I'm sure has been kind of foisted on them by the Americans, but we can't stay on defense. We have to keep going on offense, as difficult as it is, because that territory has to come back. Territory has to come back to Ukraine. Absolutely has to. Otherwise, the Russians will just come back again.
Well, and there's I forget who it was, but there was like an ex-member of the Duma who was like calling for the seizure of the Kremlin, basically, like to arrest Putin. Like it's not much, but it's the first time we're hearing sort of direct words about that.
Bashkiristan, the Bashkiristan uprising, the like thousands and even tens of thousands of people coming out on the street in Bashkiristan or Bashkoristan. They are Bashkiris from Bashkortostan. Anyhow, kind of like in Russia's Far East. That's not a small thing. You don't do that. You don't do that.
Well, and the other thing too is that China lighting a fire under them because again they want to seize that mid territory.
That's entirely possible. Entirely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and also people forget that also.
Back in 20.
Thank you.
This whole Iran-Russia conflict, there's a whole history of the Persian Empire and the Russian Empire fighting over places like Georgia and Azerbaijan. Those two don't love one another. They're just
and the dust-ups between Armenia and Azerbaijan right now are kind of where that stuff is bubbling up.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh, let me tell you. So the president has the ability to use this sort of excess military equipment. It's called I want to say the EDA or something, the EPA, where they literally any gear the U.S. government doesn't use anymore or has been replaced by something even one beta test up. We can, the president has the ability to get rid of it, sell it extremely cheaply, or give it away to allies. And we do it all the time. And in this particular case, there's a reality that once we've already agreed on giving Patriot missiles, for example, to Ukraine and some of the, and the Bradley and other things, with it comes a long-term contract of what it means to get those things. We just don't dump them on your doorstep and say, see you later. We have to backfill them. If you're giving them the gun, but you don't give them the ammo, it doesn't exactly work. It's not aid. So you sign these, part of the agreement to do this, and where the billions of dollars we've talked about goes, and why Marjorie Taylor Greene and the rest of these idiots seem to be confused about where's the money going. Like, because it hasn't even left yet, some of it, because it's spent in the United States largely, and it comes in the form of missiles that are built here and shipped over there later, or in the future, or over the next 10 months, or what have you. Right now, he has the ability to take stuff that is, one tier backwards and give it to the Ukrainians, and he has been doing it, but they're looking to ratchet that up if there's, any more of the delay from the Republican Party. He's just going to simply just go, okay, here's a giant dump of military gear for you guys to use. The only thing, the question is, do you guys want a border deal or not? Because they're going to get help. Ukrainians are going to get help. Yeah. So let's grab questions.
Well, there's one other quick thing before we go to questions. Is also there's also a Russian aspect to the border. I have a friend of mine who's down on the border doing reports about how there is a tenfold increase in
Russians,
at least a tenfold increase in Russians down there who have some very dubious ties that are headed across the border. So you could even say that securing the border is part of our effort to
stop Russia.
To stop Russia. But the Republicans don't care about any of that. It's all for show. It's all just ammunition for political kabuki theater so that they can stay in power and maintain power. It's shameful. But anyhow, that's anyhow. So that's that little border part that actually does kind of infringe on what's happening here, and that's why I bring it up. But anyhow,
I love how they're like, there's been 15,000 Russians discovered coming across the border, which is a huge ratchet up, and then we're like, well, then I guess we do know who's coming across the border, and I guess we do know where they're coming from, and I think we are interdicting them. And I got news for you: those might be the folks who are trying to get asylum, that are coming out of Russia as well. And I don't know how willing we'll be, to trust them in this process. Let's grab some questions, because you and I could just go. So
Anyhow,
Yeah, so
Johnny?
questions. I've got, first question is from Connie Kelly. Can you ask Philip if the shortage of REB, radio electronic warfare technologies, is making Ukraine rely on in-person warfare more than they would like to, and how that affects plans?
I mean, the most important, well, there have been some interesting developments with electronic warfare stuff. I mean, apparently the Russians are testing out some sort of new electronic countermeasures in Poland, because Poland lost its, like, a huge part of Poland suddenly went dark on the GPS system. And that is attributed to some sort of new weapon that the Russians are trying to kind of block GPS, which is used in, so many different things. But most of electronic countermeasures are fixating on drones. And the Russians have had an advantage with electronic countermeasures when it comes to drones, whereas the Ukrainians have kind of had an advantage with sheer numbers and with the capability and just the sheer, like, they're better drones. The Ukrainians have better drones. The Russians have more drones. And does that affect having to actually have direct contact with the enemy? I mean, again, that video that has been making the rounds of the Bradley taking on the Russian tank, there's an interview with the crew in which they say, we just stumbled on that tank. We didn't know that tank was there.
Wow.
And that's when we started, and then the drone was sent over and all the rest of it. So I'm sure that if you don't have eyes in the sky, and a lot of that is done by electronic warfare and electronic countermeasures, then you're going to have instances like this. So it's a new war. Drone technology, which is a main part of this electronic countermeasures stuff and electronic warfare, it's new. This is all brand new. We're just all testing it out. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I am a little bit concerned about what this whole thing happened in Poland with the GPS system. the Russians are no slouch when it comes to this, but then also again coming back to the Antonov that was shot down. And, if we provide them with the weaponry, we can cut them off at the knees when it comes to this kind of stuff too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I find it fascinating that right about the time people are talking about this particular concern, right? The Russians are particularly trying to do these electronic attacks or communication attacks, any of that stuff, is right before the A-50 gets shot down and all these other things are happening. So it could very well be that the Russians got out over their skis, showed where they were, and got their, and because they were using it, so much of it, that I guess there was a direct response from the Ukrainians.
Well, and again, the shooting down of the Antonov, the more we hear about it, it's again another instance of the Ukrainians just being so good at fighting the Russians. They taunted the Antonov. They made an attack north. Don't hold me to this exactly, but it's basically they made a feint north of Crimea, which is why the Russians sent the Antonov all out over the Sea of Azov. And it came within shooting distance of the Patriot. They taunted out the Antonov by making a feint that made them send their, a very valuable asset, not a lot of them in the Russian arsenal. And the Ukrainians went, aha, you fell into our trap and shot it down with a Patriot. Look, I don't know how many times I have to say this. We give them the weapons that they need and they will win this war. No questions asked.
Agreed.
No.
Meanwhile,
not a doubt in my mind.
Yeah. Well, let's grab another question because I'll dive into this other story. There's this.
We can.
Yeah. Oh my God. So yeah, go ahead, Johnny.
I've got another question. This one's from Elizabeth. What's up with the Russian buildup in the north and destruction of the oil depots there?
Right. They had one's on fire right now. Yeah.
Are they okay? So the buildup in the north, there's concern that they're going to try another offensive. There's a lot of talk here about like a major offensive, like an offensive the size of the original offensive, which would even be like try and strike to Kiev, which it would be suicidal in my opinion. But there's a lot of
they do that all the time. That's completely in line with how they do stuff.
It is. They'll never take Kiev. They'll never take Kiev. There's no way. They don't have the manpower for it. But if that's what you're referring to in terms of a Russian buildup in kind of the north and the kind of Belarus, so that they sweep down through Belarus. Maybe come in through Kharkiv as well. They already have forces in the east around Kramatorsk and Bakhmut and Lyman.
Right.
There's the front down south around Kherson. But the build, yes, apparently there are reports of a major buildup more on the Belarus side, and that could mean some sort of new offensive there. We don't know. That's a long way of me saying we basically don't know, but it is cause for concern. Now, if you talk about the fires in Russia this week, Ukraine admitted that they had a drone which flew 500 miles, which is no mean feat. A drone which flew 500 miles,
1,000 kilometers,
Belarus. Yeah, roughly 1,000 kilometers over Belarus, over northern Russia, and hit a weapons factory depot kind of thing, and more importantly, a fuel depot just outside of St. Petersburg. And it was this massive, devastating loss of a lot of fuel, a lot of weaponry, and that kind of stuff. So that's something there. But I mean, then there's all the other fires that we are seeing around Ukraine. Around Russia. That very well may be sabotage. It's absolutely possible, but it also might be a breakdown in the system because they're so many of their people who are actually supposed to be taking care of like their heating system. This is Russia in January. That they've been mobilized, or that they can't keep the infrastructure kept up because of the sanctions. But either way, we are hearing reports from all throughout Russia of centralized heating, which is what the system is in Russia, as it is here in Ukraine, being knocked out. And you go into these apartment buildings, and then you see footage from these apartment buildings, and you've got frost stalactites, hanging from the ceiling in your
inside
stairway.
the building. Yeah,
room. Sorry. Oop. I think
we got you. You're back. Did you lose me? You got a little squirrely, but we hear you just fine.
Hello.
You're there. We got you.
Oh, you're back. You're back. Sorry about that. Lost you
That's
there
okay.
for a minute for some reason.
That's okay.
Yep.
The fact that we can even talk to you where you are is amazing. Always. So, let's take a break real quick. We'll come back on the other side with more questions from the chat room. This is House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. And then as soon as the show's over today, I got to beat feet to the airport. So I apologize for not having a Midwestern goodbye,
San
but
Francisco.
we'll be back right after this. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you're off to Sexy Liberal in San Francisco tonight.
Yeah. Just like a quick turnaround or whatever. Usually like Summer and I would stay for a day or something.
Yeah.
Just go up there. But I'm only going and coming right back. Just because it's colder there than it is here, and it's too cold for her here.
San Francisco.
Yeah, and it's we didn't have
it can get chilly.
That's right. She's got a show tonight too, and her show's running tonight in case there's an issue. Being here is important. Blah blah blah. So that kind of stuff. It's working stiffs. But
don't say hi to everybody at Sexy Liberal.
I will. I'll roll in, wow them, and return.
Is Fugelsang going to be there?
Yeah, we're back.
It'll
15.
be.
If he's not wearing his Ukrainian American flag or his Vishivanka that I gave him, you give him a good spanking.
I will. Well, I'm not going to reward him for that.
Yeah.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! Fantastic. So, there's, again, I try to not make my happy ending stuff, based on Schadenfreude, where where it costs anyone. But I have to say, Russia's been sending their Kinzhal missiles to China because China just discovered a bunch of their missiles were full of water, and got all mad it
sounds like an insult. Oh, you're full of water, pal.
Yeah, well, your missiles are full of water. How do you like that? It's true. Where the fuel was and where the explosive should be, which is hilarious.
Oh my.
So Russia sent them some Kinzhal missiles, I guess, to backfill those things. The hypersonic missile that we just shot out of the air that weren't supposed to be able to be shot out of the air. And the Chinese, of course, are not so much interested in having them and buying them and continuing to be supplied them by Russia. They're what's Trump's word for it?
De-engineering.
Yeah, they're de-engineering them. They're reverse engineering these things, and then they're going to make them themselves. And they were all disappointed when they started
de-engineering
them, and when they found out that they're just technically hypersonic, for 1 millisecond of their flight path, they reach the hypersonic speed, and then it's all downhill from there.
I think my cat is too.
Yes, I've heard her. So I just found that particularly funny.
Yeah, and along those lines, though, in that same kind of theme, was Iran saying, we're not giving any drones to Russia. We're not giving any drones to Russia. I don't know what you're talking about. And then Zelensky puts out a picture of himself right next to a Iranian Shahed drone that's been shot down. Right. He's like,
Right. You what now?
Well, yeah, you're not doing what?
Yeah.
A liar says what?
I'm starting to think maybe you did tell your proxies in the Middle East to kick off another war to benefit Russia because they were losing so badly. I'm just throw that out there. Yeah. So let's grab a couple more questions before we run out of time. What do we got there, Johnny?
I think this is from Can't Stop Lying. Are reports true in Ukraine that Zelensky invited Trump to Ukraine to present his plan to end the conflict in 24 hours?
Yes. There's a wonderful interview with, it's not the Beeb, I think it's Channel 4 out of Britain. And this is Zelensky speaking in English, if I'm correct about this. I only read the transcript. I haven't heard it. In which the interviewer says, Trump says that he can finish this in 24 hours if he becomes president. What do you think about that? And Zelensky goes, well, he should come here. He should come here and explain what this because he is not. And Zelensky is so good about this. He says, because he is not involved either Russia or has not involved either Russia or us in this grand plan of his to end the war within 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I invite him to come to Kiev and explain to us what his plan is for this in the war in 24 hours thing. It's a brilliant move.
Yep.
It's a brilliant. Yeah. That's a transcript.
Sort of deal. Hey, do you want me to come in and honk the horn while you try to get my car to start? Like what if we just trade positions? It's a lot easier to just sit there and honk the horn.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and especially since because we've had Biden here. Biden came here and there was an air raid siren and he was under risk and make no doubt about it. I mean, the risk might have been comparatively minimal, but at least he showed up. And Trump, I mean, do you think that Trump would ever get on a plane?
Trump literally said that he should have given himself the I don't know if it was the Medal of Freedom. No, it wasn't the Medal of Freedom. Like, he should give himself a Purple Heart or
well, he got a Purple Heart from some service member who was
award himself because he went there for the. I guess to give turkey to the troops one night and then flew right back or whatever.
That bit. Yeah. When he went to Iraq, when he literally landed in Iraq,
was there for 2 hours and went back.
It was for 2 hours and then flew out.
And again, but if we ever found out that was filmed by the Pentagon, for the safety of the president, blah blah blah, and under the rights of propaganda that are allowed in wartime, we arranged for the president to just pretend to fly to Iraq and back. He didn't go outside. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Nobody would, and that's what dogs Trump. He very well may have gone, but he didn't stay. He didn't walk around a city square.
He never left a base. He never left.
He never went. He never stepped outside. Like they literally, the vehicle he was in drove in underground, and he got out of it in an underground. Like, oh my God, can you imagine the panic of this dude?
That whole thing was ridiculous.
Yeah. So,
it was Zelensky's response to his whole "I could finish this thing in 24 hours." All right, come over and explain.
Come on over and tell me.
You haven't explained it to either of us. For as far as we know, you haven't discussed this with the Russians either. So what are you going to tell Putin how this war is going to end within 24 hours?
And are you going to tell him something different than you're telling us?
Answers are torture the other people's families.
Yes.
That's his answer. It's like mafia solutions.
Right. Yeah. But that he does not have the guts to carry out himself. That he
he's talks, just like, you know what could end this in 24 hours? War crimes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if I just threaten to smash the testicles of your kids with a hammer, like the stories he heard from Iraq that he was rubbing his hands together. Right. Let's grab a couple more questions on that note before. Get time.
Sure thing. All right. Oh, this is from David Zapin. Please ask Phil, is there any obvious boost in Ukrainian science fiction and fantasy?
That's an interesting question. There's a massive boost in literature. There's a massive boost in films and art of all kinds. And when it comes to science fiction and fantasy, the Ukrainians do have this thing about calling the Russians the orcs. So there's as you walk around Kiev and a lot of other cities as well, by the way, you do see depictions of like Ukrainian soldiers defending against hordes of kind of undead zombie orc kind of creatures, kind of thing. So
from Lord of the Rings,
play on that. Yeah. The kind of or zombies or whatever, just kind of fantastic, turning Russians from soldiers, which is actually legitimate because it is arguable whether they're soldiers or just conscripts who are given a weapon and told, run at the lines. But there's also this cruelty of the enemy that they're facing. And so they have turned it into this kind of fantastical thing where we're not just fighting human beings, we're fighting these guys who have a completely inhuman mentality about, the value of life and military conduct and all the rest of it. But I am sure that there are out there guys who are working, if there haven't been books put out in Ukrainian already about, metaphorically what Russia is and what Ukraine is, and using kind of settings that are either
and they often come out afterwards as well. So let's grab another question. Yeah, we got time.
Yeah, here's one from Linda Blanton. Is there a shortage of drones? And if so, is there anything we can do to help? Figure that's a doable fundraiser, right?
It is, and there are lots of groups out there that do that. I don't want to say there's a shortage of drones, but you can never have too many. They need more. And as I said earlier in the program, what the Ukrainians have as an advantage over the Russians is that their pilots, their drone pilots, and the technology of their drones it surpasses what the Russians put out. The Russians just have more. They have they have dumb drones that go out there, not exclusively, but I don't know of an organization that does it off the top of my head. On my YouTube channel, there is an interview with a woman from Illinois who's come over to assist. And if you Rima, and I always screw up her surname, Zaladiakis. I'm butchering that, I'm sure. But it's on my YouTube channel, and she has been involved in drone campaigns. And so if you were to follow her on social media, I'm sure you could find a reputable one, because I trust Rima, and I trust that Rima would not put things forward that weren't reputable. But there are lots of groups out there who are collecting money and who are also supporting people, because it's also becoming indigenous now. The Ukrainians are making their own drones.
Yeah.
So
it's out there. I just posted in the chat room a link to people can donate via PayPal and other stuff, and it has the organization number for the Ukrainian Defense Forces to raise money for drones. I popped that in the chat, so hopefully people saw it. There's a story about a Ukrainian soldier that was saved by a drone. They rescued this guy. They saw him with a drone. He made it his call sign. He said his name, and then he gave the call sign 300, which means he's wounded. They sent in the drone flew back. They sent in I want to say a bottle of hot tea and medicine and a flashlight, a lighter and a flashlight. And then basically to hold him off and then they sent in a group to rescue him. They couldn't tell at the beginning because he was wounded if he was Russian or Ukrainian, but he gave the call sign and they found him. They went in and the other things the drones did was that they followed this rescue team in with night vision, and so the drone operators were able to fly out wide around these areas to let the soldiers know if anybody was near them at all and if they were in danger. So they like that value alone. Like we talk about this is really the drone wars have begun. There is an element of that's brand new to this. That's the only equivalent I think is like soldiers in the people in the battlefield in the 1400s listening to whether the birds freaked out to let them know whether there was somebody over the hill.
Yeah.
But these drones
or radar.
Yeah, right.
I mean, how much that changed World War II?
Yes, this is the equivalent of that, but with like thermal imaging and night vision being able to make sure that the rescue teams land. They know there's nobody in the bushes around them. There's no snipers. They can travel very far out and then roll back and go, "You're cool." Let them know the entire time. It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I fully encourage everybody to find a reputable. And if Hal, you've got one that you think is particularly reputable, if you want to help in that way with drones, then I fully support it. I've been kind of looking at organizations to do medical assistance, but drones are changing this war.
Yep.
They're saving lives. They're changing the face of
they're not only saving
Ukrainian
lives, they're saving Russian lives, because you don't have to kill somebody or endanger their life or put your guys in a situation where they might have to return fire if you have a drone showing you where they are. So there you go. Anyways, much love. Thank you guys for being with us today. Thank you, Johnny Million.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Philip Ittner. Follow Ittner Philip on X if you still do, and then of course on Threads, Philip Ittner, and check out his vlogs. And we will talk to you again very soon. Be safe, and I'll talk to you guys later. And then I got to run out the door. I'm going to go do sexy liberal stuff.
Have fun in San Francisco.
I will. I insist. All right. Bye everybody.
My hometown.
Okay.
All right.
Bye. Thanks, chat room. Thank you, Chicago. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
All right, go have fun. Go get a. I don't know what are you gonna have time for a meal in town?
Probably. I'll probably go to House of Nan King and then buzz off. Yeah, that'd be my guess. Yeah,
for some late night or some off.
Well, no, the House of Nan King is my dinner place. So it's right near there.
Have fun, enjoy. If you can make it down to Tommy's in the Richmond district.
Okay.
They'll take good care of you there.
All right. I'll see what I can do. All right. Cheers. Thanks, man.
Right,
bye.
Yep,
all right.
bye.
And chat room. Hold on. Let me see. Say bye to the chat room on here. If I can go to the window of the thing. Where is it? Went back to that screen. I see. Okay. I'll just click on it on here. Boink. There you are. Hi, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon. Gotta run, go. Okay. I just gotta, bye. Just wanted to say bye. Bye.